Greetings and welcome back to the fourth installment of the video series, Fun with Dash Cams. Today we're titling this the Forward the Foundation video, and the reason is because we are moving into forward-facing high-def cameras, the kind of cameras which the majority of people out there are going to be interested in seeing and using to get. So this video is basically just to give you a good idea using a product example that most people actually be interested in, not just in the fact that it's a forward-facing camera, your dash cam aficionados, but the non-aficionados, the person that just wants to go in and get a good camera, know that it's supported by a warranty, know that it has backing of a good company, know that they're going to have good customer support. And that's the secret of this video and why I chose this particular example. This is the second dash cam that I purchased. Oh, and by the way, that's for your Asimov fans out there, that's a reference for you. I'm going to be reviewing this product line, but in particular the Dashcam 20. This is the Garmin Dash Cam 20. It was kind of an experiment. I'd already bought one camera and I'd borrowed another friend's of these little $50 to $100 cheap forward-facing units, and I then bought my X3000. That was the actual first one, or the R310. That was the first one I ever actually owned, just to play around and see what it could do and couldn't do. But I wanted to see, could I actually here in the United States get a retail establishment camera? Could I purchase one from a big box store that was from a U.S. company with a strong warranty and with strong customer support behind it? In other words, could I get one with a company that stands behind the product, who I could pick up the phone and call? Because that's what most people are going to be interested in, at least here in the States, is it's great to buy this little camera for $100, but if it blows up and you have to stick it in a carton and send it off for 3, 4, 5 weeks, it's useless to you. So going with a company that's going to say, yeah, we're going to turn around and just send you a replacement unit, or work with you to get it fixed over the phone in your country, that's important. So that's rare. There are some companies out there that will do that, but you're paying for it, and that's what this is an example of. And I'll show you also some features, because you have a company that supports it, why it's good, and you also know why it's bad: money. So we're going to cover the features, what's the same, what's the difference between all these different ones, and you're going to see they're mostly the same except for an addition of a back camera on this particular model right here, which is not even sold in the US, only sold in Taiwan. We'll cover the good, we'll cover the bad, we'll cover the not so ugly. Alright, so the product line begins with the Garmin Dash Cam 10. Actually, I'm sorry. There we go. With the Garmin Dash Cam 10, starts at about $220. Yeek! I think that's why they did that, is because they wanted to get a down-priced starter model for what they were really trying to sell, which is the Garmin Dash Cam 20, which is what I own. And the reason is because the Garmin Dash Cam 20 comes with GPS. Well, Garmin is a company that sells primarily GPSs and GPS tracking systems, marine, automotive, inventory for shipping, things like that. So I think this was actually their target product, and then they scaled it back without a GPS to give it a, something for people to shoot towards who didn't necessarily want to spend the $250. They'd at least get a dash cam, and Garmin then gets to support them. But I think this was the primary focus, and it seems to be priced about that way if you look at all your other good retail cameras, retail high-def cameras that have a backing of a company with strong support. You're going to typically see them in the 200 to 250 range. So that's one of the things you're paying for. Mainly it's the warranty and the customer support. So it has GPS. The third is what's called the GDR35D. So this is the GDR10, GDR20, GDR3, but the 35D. It has a basic head unit that has one additional port. In fact, let me go ahead and pull this out. The Dashcam 20. It would look just like this. You have a power port here, mini USB. You would have one additional port right here, and that would be for the rear-facing camera. But as you can see, best price I could find, average, I don't go for the cheapest, I just look for the average price, about $370 for this. Yeek. And it also does something funny to the video. It doesn't record in true 1080. It records in 720 by 720 and sandwiches them on top to give you this big square 720 by whatever the resolution, I forgot. But anyways, it gives you this video of top and bottom, and it's really cool that it kludges them together, but I don't see the usefulness of that. You lose the whole reason of having a forward-facing high-definition camera to capture the detail of what's going on in front of you. So I was trying a lot of research, couldn't figure out what chipset, couldn't figure out what CCD. I really have no idea, and Garmin is not releasing it. And it's kind of part in venue with, I guess, what they do. It's they have a lot of patents on this stuff, and they're not going to share it with anybody. If anybody out there who happens to see this knows if there is some kind of an aftermarket camera that this was actually based on, I'd be curious to know, because I'm interested in finding out what the chipset and CCD that they use are. So it has your basic features: recording power, auto power off, has a built-in battery, gives you about 5 to 10 minutes. I wouldn't expect more than about 5 to 6. Blah blah blah. You know, all the features you've seen that you heard me talk about in the previous videos. You know, this little guy has. It tops out at 1080p. It records in H.264 with the AVI container, so it's Windows friendly and should be Mac friendly in most other players, as long as they support the H.264. This is the standard H.264. Not the weird proprietary like Windows Media Player or real-time player or anything like that. It supports G-sensor and therefore auto-saving. Also supports a save on this first button when it's in the operational mode, not the menu mode. When it's recording, it'll lock a file. So you can do it manually, plus it'll do it automatically. One thing I found interesting about this camera, or at least the ones with the GPS, the 10 you can set the time manually, but with this one there is no way to set the time because the time is actually set automatically by GPS. That's kind of interesting. And that also leads me to question, you know, why sell the DC10? Why are they selling this lower level camera? So built-in screen, and really it was the Ron Popeil retail approach, and that's why I say this, because Garmin, the kind of products they sell, they're not selling to experts, they're selling to regular consumers to plug it in and go. 5-minute setup, and really this is an extremely easy camera to set up. In fact, it comes out of the box already set up for 1080p. You plug it in, put in the card, plug it in, mount it on the windscreen, and you go. So it's really a set it and forget it kind of camera, and it's the Ron Popeil. So talking about the cameras, you have with the Dashcam 10, the 20, and the GDR35, it has the same front optics. The only difference is the back. It has somewhere between a 130 and a 140 degree lens. I can tell by just looking at it, comparing it to other cameras. Not looking at the lens, but looking at the video output at 1080p. So I'm not real sure, and I can't find anything published about it, but I think it's at least 130, but more likely probably 135, I think. Camera angle 2 is 120. What's interesting is they have the Nuvi mount, and what that is that is a ball joint. It's not your prototypical mount. Most cameras have that little notched mount where it slips in and locks in, or it may have the 1/4 inch screw on. This one has a little ball. This is kind of interesting, and you already understand the benefit of this. You have a wide degree of freedom that you can move around. You can move around most axes within about 270 degrees. So it's a very flexible mount, but it's somewhat limited. So because this is not intended to be a taxi cam, it is a forward-facing camera. It's not really intended to be looking inside. It doesn't have any IR LEDs. It does have IR LED filters on everything. Again, doesn't completely block it. It will pick up IR light, but it's not intended to be used as a night vision camera. So it's only going to record during the day. And I don't really see any options on how to do anything about it unless you want to crack it open, you know, blow to your $250, crack it open, take it out. Screen size is 2.4 on all of these. Remember, this is a rear camera, so no screen on that, of course. Powers through a mini USB, but it uses a special port. A special pinout. And I'll demonstrate that in the practical after we're done with this. So your main, the pros, of course, your primary recording options are 1080p, 30 frames per second, 720p, 30 frames per second. It has this interesting, it's not VGA, they call it WVGA. It's 848 by 480. So it Basically what this does is you get about 45 minutes to 50 minutes for a 4 gig card. This will put you up to about 2 hours. This puts you up to about 4 or 6 hours. This is a little bit more flexible, but it's also very low resolution. But then again, you saw with the Taxicams, you know, if you're trading off quality for time. You know, you still capture what's going on, and it does give you kind of a wide screen. It puts it at a 16:9 ratio. That's why they picked that, because it kind of puts it around that widescreen ratio to match the ratios of the other recording modes. Of course, though, it's going to be kind of grainy, but you still have the advantage of the very nice CCD in here, the very nice video processor, but you trade off your detail. So this is purely to get a record. This is to really capture a record with detail and find out some things. Multiple mounting options, like I said with the Nuvi. This is a suction mount. I found this in aftermarket, and remember I said Nuvi, so it's for any of the Nuvi GPSs, any of that Nuvi line uses that ball joint, so I decided to also try it out on this. This is for a sun visor. Clip it on the sun visor, and your GPS will hang, you know, like that. Downside is, you know, the sun visors kind of vibrate a little bit, but you can also clip this on other things. So I just thought that was an interesting option. You can actually, so you can get it off the windscreen if you don't want to put it, or if you can't put it mounted on the windscreen somewhere. I also found kind of interesting with this is because, you know, it uses a compression spring to hold it in place. You can get pretty much almost a 90 degree. Of course, you know, this mount can be positioned however you want it, and with that ball joint, like I said, it gives you a good bit of freedom. So it's intended to be mounted pretty much like that, but I found that you can actually get away with mounting it at almost a 90 degree angle. And I found that was kind of interesting playing around with it, not as an action cam, but just to see what kind of views you can get from inside the car by mounting it in the back wing windows facing the front, or mounting it from funny angles elsewhere in the car, just to see what kind of views you can get out the front, out the sides, out the back. So that was just something to consider, is why this is a very flexible option, and why I thought it was really interesting. This is one of my permanent cameras. Very clear daytime. It's pretty good. It's very good dusk. It does a real good job of capturing light. At nighttime, just like all dash cams that are like any camera, really. Night vision, there's no such thing as night vision. It's so-so. Unless you have a bunch of IR illuminators mounted around your car, or unless you have a bunch of floodlights shining out all over the place in the front. Remember, a camera is going to take the light you give it. So if it's at nighttime, very little light, and you say, well, there's no visibility, that's because that's what cameras are supposed to do. So if your job is to try to get night vision, then you need to focus on a night vision camera, a zero lux, or an IR-based camera, or a UV-based camera, or some type of camera that is intended for no light or low light situations, because, you know, for the prices you're paying for these guys, the kind of features you're getting, you know, unless you're going to pay the $300, $400 for a true night vision, well, you know, $200 with some of the Sony camcorders that actually do zero light, but they use IR illuminators. So you're going to have to use some kind of thing outside of the scope of a dash cam in order to get true night vision. So, but it actually does pretty good for night vision compared to the sample you saw for those the really cheap taxi cams from Video 3. I'll post some sample video showing daytime, dusk, and nighttime, and you'll see that it actually is pretty decent. But of course, GPS with auto-sync. It does automatic overlay, and in fact, you cannot turn off that overlay. It records GPS location, date, time stamp, and your speed on every video, and it's supported in every single resolution. It also encodes GPS coordinates and date, time stamp as metadata in the video files themselves. So this camera does not actually produce a GPS log. You can extract a GPS log from it with specialized software, so I've researched. I've never done it, but it apparently is encoded automatically in the video file, but it's already burned in as via an overlay into the video stream itself. Very simplified menus, and it goes in with the philosophy of Garmin, which is taking GPS-enabled products and making them useful to the masses. So I immediately saw, because I've been an owner of previous Garmin's, it became very apparent to me when I got this and started playing around with it, how I couldn't see certain things because they're intentionally hiding them from the user. Because it's not intended to be a camera for the gizmo-happy customer. It's intended to be a useful camera for the common person to be able to plug in and go, just like all their other GPS-enabled products. Built-in screen is an advantage because it actually plays back very well. It looks real nice. Downside, well, we already talked about Meteor night vision. It doesn't have WDR, so in no light or low light situations, forget it. But that's most cameras you're going to find. There's no way to manually set the time. A little bit of a bugger here. It is kind of annoying because you may want to. Well, you don't have that option with this. Power cable's too short. So this power cable that came with it, it's also used as a proprietary pinout. Remember that because it's a Garmin, and you'll see why that's a niggling little thing in a second. It's only about 5 feet long. This is intended literally not to be run around in your car. It's just like any other Garmin GPS. You mount it to your windscreen. This dangles down from the side using their standard, very standard plug. All Garmin products seem to use this, that use that 1/4 inch plug. I mean the mini USB plug. So it dangles off your windscreen, plug it in, and it goes. Easy to install, easy to take off. You cannot run this thing around the soffits or the lining in your car. GPS from a cold start, if the GPS has been sitting there unpowered, unplugged for a while, it takes about a minute for the GPS to sync. When powered up, it takes only a few seconds, unlike those dash cams you saw before where every time it powers up it takes it about a minute or two before it even starts to register a GPS track, maybe even a few minutes. This does it pretty quick. One thing that this particular camera I've noticed has an intermittent lockup, and that's going to be a warranty issue. I'm actually calling about warranty, and I'm going to have this thing fixed, but I have that option. Any of those other cameras I showed you before, trying to get warranty repair on those things, yeah, not going to happen. I basically say when it breaks, I throw it away and buy another one. So the intermittent lockup thing, I've already got a ticket in for it, and I'm gonna have it worked on. They're probably just going to go and RMA it. So software's not included in the camera, unlike you saw in some of the examples from 3. This particular camera and this is probably what you're going to find typical with most of your cameras outside of those SG based. Like I said, every one of those is built the same, uses the same basic software. This is a particular brand, particular model using particular chipsets, so you're in the wide range of dash cams now, where they go from Novatex to all winners to the Ambarellas, to all the other kind of chipsets out there. And so typically they don't have a built-in player. This one does not. Now you can download a player. The whole point of this was to, again, simplicity. You plug it in, it looks like a USB device, you review your video. You don't have to have a special player to pull back any of your GPS data because it's there on the screen. It's already burned into the video file. So everything you need to see is already rendered in the video. You just play it with a usually Windows Media Player, because that's 80-something, almost 90% of computers out there use Microsoft Windows. So that's why they don't include any software. Again, they strip it out for simplicity by guiding you into the simple option. So everything about it is basic in its operation. So what's the not so ugly? It's a little pricey, but with the support you get, it's what you can expect to pay, especially from a Garmin. So I'll leave that as it is. I've already said enough. Sporadic freezing, but it's covered in a warranty. That's the not so ugly part about it. Firmware updates. Every one of those cameras I showed you in video 3, good luck finding firmware for them, if you can, and if they survive. With as many makers of those things, they all use the same chipsets. Finding the exact right one, exactly the right type of firmware, may destroy it. You may ruin it in the process, like I did. So it's not quite intuitive as to what you have to do, but once you're guided there by the website, it's easy to go. We'll cover that when we do the actual review of the software. As far as playing options, you have Windows Media Player, but the one provided has to be downloaded is the Garmin Dash Cam player. There's actually another product called Connect, which is an older one, and then there's a new product that's called Garmin Express, which is what you actually use to get firmware for this device. But Garmin Express is used on a wide variety of Garmin products. Hence, this little guy is incorporated into an entire product suite and therefore supported as such. Okay, so talking about out-of-the-box experience, there we go. Comes with your basic box. As you can see, it's not a lot of white labeling. Doesn't have a lot of pretty icons that say, oh, I can do this and I can do that. It's got some real basic ones. You know, GPS, it supports taking snapshots as well as video, 1080p. They say 2.3, but it's advertised as 2.4 everywhere else. And it has G sensor. And look, it's GPS, go figure. So, what's in the box? Warranty cards and manuals in many different languages. Not really, we're not Europe, but we usually get everything in 3. Got your typical cable. Get your Nuvi mount camera, and it comes, and this is also interesting, is because it actually does come with, you know, you would figure it'd come with a bigger one, but it actually does come with a 4 gig SD card and an adapter. Now, covering a little bit about the UI of the camera and showing you what I mentioned about power, is this guy uses a proprietary pinout for his power. So here's an example. I have a standard mini USB. It's nothing special, it's non-Garmin. I'm going to put the card in the camera. So as I can find the damn thing, there it is. And I'm going to apply power, and you're going to see what happens when you have a non-Garmin power source go into it. It'll fire up and it'll immediately then want to go into USB mode. See, it says external power has been lost. Come on. Pardon me for a second. I have a loose connection. Let me try this again. And it detects it as mass storage, as if you were plugging it into a PC. So it uses a special pin. I think that the power mode that it uses, or the power cable, is USB to go, maybe something like that, but I'm probably wrong. But that's just a point I wanted to make about this. So we can still come in here, look at the UI real quick. It immediately starts recording. That's something about this. It's almost impossible to stop it recording. I'm in video mode, in the menu mode. It's still recording. You can't really stop it. This thing is intended to record, and it takes, so that's why I say it kind of simplifies. It's kind of annoying to people who want a lot more control out of it. But the whole point of this thing is you set it once, and like the Ron Popeil principle, you set it and forget it. So you've set it, you mounted it, you turn it on, it records. What's also nice is the fact, let's just look at the outside first. Here's your power, very sensitive. You basically press and hold very lightly, and it'll turn on, press and hold very lightly, and it'll turn off. You have your SD mounted here where it's not in the way of any cables or anything. Once it's mounted, it's very nice to be able to just come in, and you can remove that card for playback, so you don't have to do anything to the cables or remove the camera from the car. So that is a nice detail that the designers thought of. Charging, it would be nice if the charging port was up here, but hey, it is what it is. So different record modes, 1080, 720, and that weird WVGA. It could be useful. Of course, collision detection. Here's what I thought was kind of interesting, is it actually has a G-sensor. The G-sensor reset is a G-sensor calibration. I've never seen that on any other camera. So this thing actually you mount it in the car, and then you can recalibrate the G-sensor. Then you can set your sensitivity, and then it enables the write protect mode for your video files in the event of a trigger event from the G-sensor. Protected video overwrite, I don't know what that is, honestly. Your ability to record video, to record audio, turn your mic on and off, your exposure value. And you notice you don't have a lot of settings here. This is the only setting for controlling. There's no white balance, there's just the exposure setting. Anything else that's automatic is automatic. Screen brightness, this of course controls this screen. Volume control for the built-in speaker for playback. Power off delay. I have this set so it basically just turns off immediately, but you can set it to continue up to about 5 minutes, which is also why the battery lasts about 5 minutes. Screen auto off. This is a feature I've noticed that causes this to freeze. It's not everyone that does it, but for this particular camera I've noticed the button sound is just that button sound. You press it and you can hear the buttons go up and down and click, and it's annoying. Time zone is really the only thing you can set for time. Daylight savings, of course. Units in miles or kilometers. Date format is only 2 formats. Time is 24/12 hours. Text, typical European languages and Russian languages. So this thing is not intended for the Asian market. This is intended for Western European market. I think that's why they have like the 35D and the 35 series, is that's Taiwanese and intended for the Asian market. I thought this was interesting. GPS status. It actually tells you what GPS satellites it's talking to, and eventually it'll give me a GPS coordinate and a speed and an elevation. So I thought this was kind of an interesting feature of the camera. It's not really useful other than to see that it's actually picking up a signal. I'm inside, so it's not going to pick up one very well. Your 60 or 50 hertz. Then we get down to your file menus. File delete. It basically sets, you have a delete button, and it tells it is it going to delete a video or a snapshot. Come on. Format the card. Load factory defaults. Software update. This is not a software update, this is just software version. But I thought that was funny that it says that. But it gives you the nice information. Go to Garmin.express. And that's pretty much it. And then this is telling about what the camera is. What's interesting is this information is also stored on an XML file. When it formats the card, it dumps an XML file and records vitals about the camera. I thought that was kind of interesting. All right. Next part of the video is going to cover actual software and UI options. We'll be moving over to my high-powered Celeron machine, and I apologize for that. Alright, so now moving over to do a demonstration of the software, the player software and the support software that's available for the Garmin series of cameras. As you can see, you're looking at the desktop of my oh so powerful Windows Celeron machine. It's not my main machine, it's just a junk machine. We have the Garmin camera, the DC20, standard USB data cable, which was also included in the package. And we're going to go ahead and wire it up and plug it in. I did not include a card in the camera on purpose because I don't want it to have one. This is purely to demonstrate the Garmin Express software. So our support software for loading firmware is called Garmin Express. It also references Garmin Connect. That's the older way, but they've moved everything over to Garmin Express. They've fully integrated this camera into their line with vivofits and the Nuvi GPSs and everything like that. So this immediately reads my camera, and it shows that I'm currently running the version 3.0 of the firmware, and it's up to date. And you can scan for other devices. This is primarily used for vivofits, for Nuvis, for loading maps, for loading firmware, for things like that, and for uploading, like for the vivofits, that is their fitness line of products from Garmin that are GPS enabled, to be able to take your GPS plots and upload them to a support site with Garmin to then keep track of your fitness. So we can get a little bit more information about the camera by going over to devices, and it tells us and gives us some basic support options, the manual and everything. Now the printed manual came with it, but we can always download it, get it back if you need to, and we can back up certain things. Now this is grayed out because, again, this is not a vivofit, so we don't have any GPS tracks for fitness that we're trying to back up to the main site. And basic setup options. So we'll get out of that and unplug the camera, put it away. I'm going to go ahead and simulate the SD card on the desktop. When you format the card, it comes up with a volume called no name. That's what it does for the card after it formats it. It just formats it as a basic FAT32. So you can get better than 4 gigs, 4 gigs up to 30, well, 4 gigs up to 32 gigs is what it supports. I haven't tried a 2 gig card in it, but my understanding is that it'll take it, but it doesn't like it. It causes some instabilities. So the player is going to render a little funny on this screen. I had to increase the resolution so that you can see the whole player interface. There we go. And it does not render the title bar. I don't understand why it does that. Why it does that on this machine. I did this on my machine at work and it worked fine. And it's a Windows 7 machine, so I don't know what's going on with this. But anyway, so I have a selection of basic videos here, and they're date time stamped. And like I said, you know, the interface is shoved over and it shaves off the top. But it would give you the date and time over here. It gives you duration of the video: 4 minutes, 2 minutes. 8 minutes. This, I believe, was recorded in 720. So, and one thing about this camera is that it records at a set time. You also notice from the UI, there is no way to set the record size, the record time length, because it's recording it based upon, just like those old the dash cams that we saw in the Video 3 series. It has a preset memory size, so it's recording it to a certain block of RAM, and then it dumps the file. So your file size is predetermined. So the length of your file size is determined by how much recording you did and at what resolution. So in this case, this is 720p, and you have to, sorry, it looks a little jerky playback, but it's actually very fluid when you play it back. In fact, here, let's stop. And if I come under here and play the same video file, oh yeah. So we end up with a Garmin folder, and we have two. We have for snapshots for any of the pictures you took. There's a button on the main screen for that. In the record mode, it'll snap that picture, and then it'll go immediately back into recording video. So that's what's also nice. You can pull the camera off the Nuvi mount. You can take pictures of an accident scene if you need to, or whatever. Put it back on the mount and proceed. In this case, we're looking for video, and that's that very first video file. Play it with media player. Oh, sorry, that was a test video from work. I just need a video file. And like I said, this is a somewhat underpowered camera, an underpowered computer. The video actually plays fairly smooth. I never saw any problems with it. With a powerful machine, it'll play just fine. As you can see, the camera immediately picked up its GPS signal within about 3 seconds. With my speed indicator. The speed indicator is fairly accurate, unlike you will see in some future videos. I have another camera which I'll be reviewing for an independent camera, but multi-camera system, to show you an example of a multi-camera system that you can build using forward-facing cameras in my own vehicle. That's going to be in the next series of videos. So we got date time stamp, GPS data, and the speed. Let's skip forward a little bit, get out on the road, and I'm driving, about 43, 42. It's, fairly accurate, picking up your track very quickly. That's what's interesting about this camera, but it comes from a company that deals with GPSs, so I would only expect that. So there is no real lag in the speed, the rendering of the speed, versus what you see in the video. Some of these other cameras that actually do that and will produce an overlay, you'll notice a 1 to 2 second, 3 second lag. I have one example of a camera that the speed is shown on the video prior to when you're actually going that speed by about a second or two. I have other examples that where it renders about 2 seconds behind. So the fact that this is synced up very well with your frame of reference with your video here is what's nice. So I just want to show you that the playback in the player, it requires a very powerful machine. So you have the option of maps or not. So this is your basic player, and it supports all your basic features. It says event record. It doesn't show the G-sensor data, but it shows if there was an accident. So in this video, it detected a collision or detected a G-sensor event. It'll then mark it along the timeline. It actually shows where it's picking up G-sensor hits. Mine, of course, was turned off for the video, but it still is going to record down here where it felt, where it thought the impact may have come from. Now in this case I'm driving on a semi-bumpy road. It's a very smooth stretch of road, but my car bumps around a little bit. And we can then do screen grab, or we can move into full screen mode for playback. So it's a very basic player. This is just an example of me in the driveway of Taco Bell. This is a nighttime shot, so you can see we got the light coming into the camera. We got a lot of background darkness in the field, and you can see it's still doing a pretty good job of rendering the video in the background there. And that's me illuminating across the parking lot and actually illuminating across 3 lanes of traffic. So I mean, this thing is actually doing a really good job when it has light of rendering in dark conditions. Now this is, like I said, at nighttime. There is no sunlight at all. And I think I have a sample of dusk. Okay, so this is dusk. This is about 30 minutes before sundown. The sky was a little bit darker. So as you can see, it's doing a real good job of gathering light. And like I said, you'll notice that the performance here, as long as there's light illuminating, it does a very good job of rendering with the light it has available. But like I said, in zero light conditions, if I didn't have the headlights on, it's not going to see anything. And this is more or less a semi-daytime shot. This is about 3 hours before sundown, but it's also a very overcast day. But as you can see, it's nice, it's bright, it's vibrant, and very fluid. And this is called the Dashcam player. I mean, it's a very generic game. It's just the Dashcam player. So I hope this satisfies your curiosity about the playing options. But like I said, you don't require this. It's interesting, but it doesn't really give you any more of an overview except for maybe the G-sensor data where it thinks an impact is coming from. And oh yeah, another thing I wanted to show you was with the map data. It's going to show your GPS data that it's extracting from that video file. Remember, there is no log file, no separate log file being pulled for this series of camera. So it's pulling it from the video stream itself, encoded in metadata. It gives us our time start, time stop recording, total mount time. It gives us GPS track data, our speed, and this uses Bing. Whereas a lot of your players will use Google Maps to render. This one is using the Bing Maps, which I thought was kind of interesting. So it's obvious that they worked in conjunction with Microsoft, and that's also an indicator of the video codec they use, which is, it's generic, but it's in an AVI format, so it's typically going to be used by a Windows user, which is 90% of the people out there. And you saw with the Garmin Express how it's integrated into entire product lines. So this camera was done with the intent of being supported and sold in a retail fashion, along with the full complement of other products, GPS-enabled products by Garmin. This concludes our review of the software features of the device.